We're here on Memorial Day to both commemorate and celebrate the life of Daniel Agami. And we're here with his sister, Shaina. Thank you very much for coming and giving us the privilege of hearing a little bit about his life and his story.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me have this opportunity to tell his story.
Absolutely. Why don't we start off by telling us a little bit about what it was like as a little kid with a brother who was serving in the United States military and what that did for your family.
It was very rewarding to be even part of such an amazing military just to begin with, and hearing the stories that he was able to do and accomplish really made me feel special, knowing, I would walk into school and kids would know that I had the older brother serving in the military, and they were very interested in wanting to know, what was he doing? He was the big guy over there, so he really did inspire not just the adults, but also children too.
How young were you when he first enlisted, and what was that experience like? Conversations with your parents, did you hear that?
Right. So I was 5 when he decided to enlist. I was just a little girl, so I wasn't really so much involved in the conversations, but I do remember him coming home one day and him telling my parents, I'm just going to enlist. He was 23 at the time, and he just said, I'm going to enlist in the American military, and that was it. He used to be a DJ, and he used to be a bartender, but he just kind of, after he got his GED and did all of that, he just decided, I think I'm gonna head off to the military. And my parents said, he's an adult, he can decide what he wants to do, and we're not gonna tell him no. So, we all supported him along the way.
Turning into a military family at that moment.
Yeah.
What was the effects that you saw both on your parents internally, your family internally, but also on the way that the community sort of respected or had conversations with you guys?
Once we became that military family, especially in a Jewish community where it's not so common to see a Jewish American Israeli man go off to the American military. So I was able to see the shift in my parents, of them, and all of us, between my other brother and I, all of us kind of feeling a little more anxious, obviously a little more on edge, not knowing when, we were going to speak to him next or even see him next. But it did kind of shift our family dynamic a little bit. But, we were happy to be there to be his support in the community. The amount of support we'd gotten from the community to begin with was crazy, between all the Chabads around South Florida. Even while he was enlisted and in the military and active duty, he would come home and still give speeches to the local communities. I believe in about 2006, he gave a speech at the Chabad of Boynton Beach when he was home. So it was very rewarding for the community to even have a member like that, within their space.
You talk about that connection to Judaism that he kept with him, which I assume he also had while he was deployed overseas.
Yeah.
And how much did it mean for him to get packages or Jewish packages, Yontif, festival boxes from Aleph, or so on and so forth? Right.
So he was very connected with his Judaism. He loved to be Jewish. He was very pro-Israel, pro-America, and he made that very clear while he was on base, that he was Jewish and that he wasn't going to have any problems with anybody. And he was the only Jew in his unit. So a lot of these people that he was with never even met a Jewish person in their life. So he was kind of the one explaining to everybody what maybe certain customs we have, or, certain holidays we observe. And for him, he actually was called to go to Saddam Hussein's palace, and he lit the menorah over there, which was really, really cool. And he had the opportunity to do that, and Bill O'Reilly was there. So it was really cool for him to even have that opportunity.
Maybe let's give that a little bit of context of how a young lad out of out of Boca Raton or wherever, suddenly is lighting the menorah at Saddam Hussein's house.
Exactly, and it was pretty much like almost a year or a little less after he was captured and everything. So it was very new and fresh still. So during the holiday season, they had a giant Christmas tree and a giant menorah. And the military was trying to find, Jewish service members to come find them. But there were, at the time, there weren't so many. And they knew that my brother was, so he didn't know where he was going. They kind of just grabbed him and said, grab a few things. You're going on a plane, like you're going on a jet and you're just going. He had no idea where he was going until he got there. And he got off and he's like, oh my God, so there's an interview online of him like on the streets, talking about his experience lighting the menorah there.
I want you guys to have a great Hanukkah, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Let's talk a little bit about his service. If you want to just maybe go through some of his deployments and some of the achievements that he gained when it comes to pride for your family.
Right. Daniel did his basic training in Fort Benning in Georgia, and then he went off to Germany. And his base actually used to be a preoccupied Nazi World War II base, and his bunker was one of the few bunkers with still Nazi emblems all over it. So it was kind of just like the irony, like he was doing good just being in that base, but that was the main base in Germany. And then he was shipped off to Iraq, and he was mostly based in Baghdad and Adamiyah over there. He did so many things while he was overseas, from, saving lives really, and taking a lot of, the big bunt of a lot of people's things going on, which led to a lot of his accomplishments. The Purple Heart, he was wounded through his death, so they awarded him the Purple Heart from that, as well as the Global War on Terrorism and a bunch of other medals that, we're so proud to even say that he was even rewarded. He was in a tank, and there were a bunch of, terrorists like going and shooting around and this and that, and he was able to just there was times where, he would call my mom, and my mom would be like, what's that noise in the background? And he'd be on the top of the tank just literally shooting people. He'd be like, oh, like I'm just, protecting the space or whatever it is. And my mom would be so, concerned, as a mother would be, but for the military culture in itself, like that's very normal for them to be able to have that accuracy, but also still kind of multitask and like call their mom, so.
I guess that shows a little bit about his personality as well, that he, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like he's the sort of guy that didn't take things too seriously, but had a very serious understanding of having to get stuff done right and correctly.
Yes, that's exactly who he was. He was funny. I think that really also shows like his little piece of personality and character of him really lighting up that space when he walks in. He was always life of the party, and even throughout his time on base and this and that, like they for sure knew that he was the guy you want to go to when you want to have fun, when you want to have a good conversation, when you want to have a deep conversation, whatever it is. He was always such a good friend to his friends, but also, of course, a great older brother, a great older sibling. And he continues to do so by not just inspiring me, but others as well.
So when he came back after that first round, what was the conversations like at home and the thought process of going back over there, and what was his purpose for service?
He came home, so his last time home was Pesach of 2007, and he came home feeling so connected with his brothers overseas, which makes sense. They're with each other for a very long time, and he definitely felt like he needed to go and, protect and serve. And I felt like it was also very difficult maybe for him to adjust a little bit back into, civilian life. But of course, he took the opportunity of being home. He didn't take that for granted, and he was very happy to be home. But I know that it was maybe a little difficult for him to also be home, knowing that, his other brothers in arms are still, overseas, and he's not over there. But when he did come home, that was when the idea for my bat mitzvah project started coming up, because we named it a Combatica, like the Combatica. And he kind of dubbed that as a combat plus yarmulke, and that kind of combined it together. And he kind of dubbed that word. And so it stuck with us. We thought it was so funny because it was a camouflaged army-styled kippah. And then that's when we kind of decided with my bat mitzvah project to start selling these and raise money for the Aleph Institute, because they did such amazing work. They continue to do such amazing work.
Through Daniel, you had that connection with Aleph.
Yeah.
From that time, and that was very much I guess Aleph were a very big support on him being able to.
Yes, and it was also very new at the time, because I think the Aleph Institute only, I think it was only created in 2006, 2005, something like that. But he was like one of the first probably participants of, the Aleph Institute in receiving some of the things that they do send overseas. Rabbi Lipsker, Rabbi Goldstein, all of these Rebbeim, they were all so involved in my brother's life, and they continue to be so in my life, my family's life. I
know that a lot of families come to the military conference.
Yes.
Every year and are celebrated there. So what does that effect have on your family?
So this past year, I actually went to the military conference with my mom, and it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful. It felt nice to be able to connect with a community that really helped not just my brother, but my family and myself included through a very difficult time, and being able to connect with those people, and they still have that same love and admiration for you, for your family, and they just want to be there and support. It felt so nice to be in that type of energy and space.
Beautiful. And when your brother would come back from deployment on trips, were there any stories that he would tell you from being over there?
So I was so young that he probably didn't want me to know so much of what was going on. A lot of things that I do know have been either relayed over to me or from my own memories. But I do know for him that he loved doing what he did. He loved it completely. And my family supported it 100%. They backed him up with whatever he needed. They would send him things all the time. And him coming home and talking to my parents and debriefing with them, I think was very helpful for him. And for me personally, I have my own stories of, when we were kids and things that we would do before he left. But when he came back, he would always bring either certain gifts and presents for me when he was overseas. Every different country he'd go to, he'd bring back a little token for me, and I kept them all. So it's he was always thinking of me regardless of where he was. So.
And to come to the more difficult part of the conversation, the part that Memorial Day is about, are you able to talk a little bit when it comes to his ultimate sacrifice, as well as how much the importance of his sacrifice means to us who live with the freedom that he stood to protect?
Yes. So he was killed in 2007 in June, and that kind of just changed everything for our family. But from that, we were able to see a lot of things change, either politically or religiously. Just a lot of people either being inspired by his story, laws being passed, whatever things, memorials being made in memory of him, in honor of him. And that has just been so special to see as as a younger sister, and seeing the impact that he's made on the world, even without physically being here. It just shows me that he's still here. He's still his presence is still here. And I think that's like a huge lesson and that I take for myself, of just like, even though I might not feel him physically and he's not here, but I know he's literally here, you know? So it is what it is, but I'm so happy to have said that. My brother served in the American military. He was in the Army. He was the big guy over there. He was on the front lines. I think that's really cool to even say. So
Yeah, I mean, I like that last part.
Yeah.
That is cool to even say. Well, I guess that comes to that full circle idea. And is there anything that you want to share when it comes to Memorial Day that you specifically think about that you'd like to point out?
Right. So every Memorial Day, this comes to my mind because as also part Israeli, I know that Yom HaZikaron and like Israel Memorial Day is so different there compared to what it is here. You know, when you watch TV, you hear commercials, it's the Happy Memorial Day, or go buy a new mattress, or whatever it is. And for me, it just really rubs me a little bit the wrong way, because I've seen the other side of what an actual Memorial Day should look like, where people do take that moment of silence and people do recognize the loss that people go through and the families go through. So for me personally, when Memorial Day comes around, making sure you go to that Memorial Day ceremony, or even acknowledging, you know, the families and the sacrifices that their loved ones have made and their families continuously make every day. It's just something I continuously think about and bring up every Memorial Day to family members, to friends, social media. It's something I just put out there because I really want people to think, you know, it's not about the beaches. It's not about the barbecue. It's not about the sail. It's really about the families and the military servicemen and women who are really protecting us to be able to live as freely as we do, religiously, freedom of speech, whatever it is. But we have that freedom to be able to do that because of those servicemen and women.
That's beautiful. And before I go, is there any ideas that I didn't touch upon that you'd like to?
I'm just really proud to even say that, you know, Daniel was my brother. I'm really happy that I have this opportunity to talk about him, his story, his legacy, and kind of continue that on. And it's just been a really special opportunity.